At 32, I learned that the city I had dedicated my life to cleaning up could still cough up the ghosts of my past in the most literal way possible. My name is Detective Alina Vance, and the three men now surrounding me in the alley were the last loose threads of the biggest case of my career, the one that had cost me my marriage, my peace, and nearly my life. The rain in the city of Veridia was a constant, grimy companion. It didn't cleanse, it just made the neon signs bleed and the asphalt stink of wet trash. Tonight it was a fine, persistent mist, casting halos around the flickering streetlights. I was supposed to be off duty. The scent of stale coffee and gun oil still clung to my trench coat, a familiar perfume after a 14-hour day spent chasing down leads on a new string of armed robberies. My apartment, with its leaky faucet and stack of unread novels, beckoned. All I wanted was a hot shower and the distant, numbing hum of a television. My car, a beat-up sedan that had seen better days, was parked 2 blocks away, a decision I was now regretting as I took a shortcut through the narrow, unlit alley that connected Oak Street and Fifth Avenue. It was a calculated risk, one I'd taken 100 times before. My hand was already in my pocket, fingers brushing the cold, familiar grip of my service weapon, a habit as ingrained as breathing. That's when they emerged from the shadows, not as one but in a practiced pincer movement. One from behind an overflowing dumpster, his bulk suddenly blocking the alley's entrance. 2 more stepped out from a recessed doorway, cutting off my retreat. They were large, dressed in dark, nondescript clothing, their faces hard and etched with a casual menace I recognized instantly. These weren't opportunistic muggers. They were professionals. The largest one, a bull of a man with a broken nose and knuckles scarred from countless fights, took a step forward. A cruel smirk twisted his lips. "Well, well, look what the cat dragged in. All alone, little lady?" His voice was a low gravel meant to intimidate. The one to my left, leaner and with a nervous tick in his jaw, chuckled. "Looks like you took a wrong turn. This is a dead end." The third, silent and massive, simply cracked his knuckles, the sound like dry twigs snapping in the quiet alley. My heart didn't hammer, my breath didn't hitch. Instead, a cold, crystalline calm settled over me. This was it. The other shoe was finally dropping. I'd been waiting for this moment in some deep, hidden part of my psyche for over a year. I slowly pulled my hand from my pocket, leaving the gun in its holster for now. "I think you're the ones who are lost," I said, my voice steady, devoid of the fear they were expecting. "This is my street." The leader, broken nose, laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "Your street? This is our city, or it was until a certain bitch with a badge got ideas above her station." His words were the key, turning the lock on a door I'd tried to keep sealed. The case, the one that had consumed me body and soul. His name was Silas the Viper Vancorp, a kingpin who dealt in weapons, narcotics, and human misery, all from a gilded penthouse that overlooked the very streets he poisoned. He was untouchable, a ghost who left no fingerprints, only a trail of broken lives and bodies in dumpsters. The department had tried for years to nail him. We had nothing but circumstantial evidence and a growing pile of closed files. My break came from a source no one expected, a terrified bookkeeper named Arthur Finch. He'd been skimming a tiny, almost imperceptible amount to pay for his daughter's leukemia treatment. Silas found out. Finch, knowing he was a dead man, decided to trade the only thing he had left, a complete digital ledger of Silas's operations, encrypted on a tiny flash drive, for witness protection for his family. I was his handler. For 3 months, we met in safe houses, libraries, and crowded diners. He was a small, balding man who jumped at his own shadow, but he had the courage of a lion when it came to his little girl. He gave me everything. Names, dates, shell corporations, murder-for-hire orders. It was a prosecutor's dream. But Silas had eyes everywhere. The pressure was immense. My then-husband, Mark, a kind-hearted architect who built homes, couldn't understand the shadows that were swallowing me. "Just come home, Alina," he'd plead, his voice frayed with worry. "Let someone else take it. It's not worth our marriage." But I couldn't. Arthur Finch had trusted me. His daughter's face, smiling from a photo he always carried, was seared into my memory. It was worth everything. The night before the big raid, I got a call. Arthur's safe house had been compromised. They'd gotten to him. By the time my team and I arrived, it was too late. The image of Arthur, his life extinguished in a pool of his own blood, the photo of his daughter lying just beyond his outstretched hand, was a brand on my soul. It was my failure. My fault. We moved up the raid. The takedown of Silas's headquarters was a chaotic, bloody firefight. I led the entry team. I was the one who kicked in the door to his inner sanctum. He was there calm as you please, pouring a glass of expensive scotch. He didn't resist, he just looked at me, his eyes like chips of ice, and smiled. "Detective Vance," he'd said, his voice smooth as silk. "This is a temporary inconvenience. My associates will be in touch." He was convicted on 47 counts, including multiple charges of murder. He got 12 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. It was a landmark victory. The mayor gave me a medal. The press called me a hero. But Mark left me 2 weeks later. He couldn't live with the ghost of Arthur Finch in our home, with the constant fear that Silas's associates would make good on his promise. "I can't sleep, Alina," he'd said, his bags already packed. "I look at you and I see the case. I don't see us anymore." The door closing behind him was the quietest, most devastating sound I had ever heard. And now in this rain-slicked alley, his associates were here. The lean one with the twitchy jaw took a step closer. "We got a message from Mr. Vancorp. He's real unhappy with how things turned out." "I bet he is," I said, my voice low. I shifted my weight slightly, centering my balance. The calm I felt was not passive, it was a coiled spring. Prison orange really isn't his color. Broken Nose's smirk vanished. "Funny, he specifically asked for you, said to make it personal, said you had a thing for alleys and dumpsters." Arthur Finch's body discarded like trash. Rage, cold and sharp, lanced through the calm, but I channeled it, refined it into a weapon. My training took over, I assessed them. Broken Nose was the brawn, the talker. Twitchy was the weak link, nervous. The silent one was the true danger, the enforcer. "I remember you three now," I said, the pieces clicking into place from a year's worth of surveillance photos and testimony. "Leo the Bull Mancini," I nodded at Broken Nose. "Rick Fingers Donnelly," that was Twitchy, a safecracker and electronics man. "And you," I said, my gaze landing on the silent giant. "Mikhail Volkov, former Spetsnaz, you're the one who handled cleanup." He was the one who had killed Arthur Finch. Volkov's eyes, flat and dead, met mine, a flicker of surprise, then nothing. How does she know that?" Rick stammered, his tic getting worse. Leo recovered, puffing out his chest. "Doesn't matter, she won't be telling anyone else." He pulled a knife from his belt, the steel glinting in the dim light, a shiv honed to a razor's edge. "The boss said a bullet was too quick for you, wanted something more intimate." This was it, the moment of decision. I could go for my gun, it was the logical choice. But drawing against three men, one with a knife already in hand in a confined space, was a gamble. And it was too quick for them, too. They didn't deserve a quick, clinical end. They deserved to feel a fraction of the fear Arthur Finch felt. I let a slow, cold smile spread across my face, a predator's smile. It unnerved them. They expected pleading, tears, terror. "You're right, Leo," I said, my voice dropping to a near whisper. "This is personal. Silas sent his 3 best boys to do his dirty work. He must be desperate." I took a small step forward, not back. But he made one fatal mistake. "Yeah, what's that?" Leo growled, gripping the knife tighter. My hand went to the lapel of my trench coat, and I slowly unpinned the small, silver detective's shield that had been concealed there. I held it up, the city's seal catching a sliver of light. "He sent you to corner the detective who put him away." For a split second there was only stunned silence. Their brains scrambled to reconcile the helpless woman they thought they had trapped with the reality of the situation. I saw the confidence in Leo's eyes shatter. Rick took an involuntary step back. Only Volkov remained impassive, but his body tensed, ready to strike. That half-second of their shock was all I needed. I moved. I didn't go for my gun, I went for Leo's knife hand. As he lunged, driven by panic and rage, I sidestepped, grabbed his wrist, and used his own momentum to slam his arm down hard on my rising knee. The crack of bone was sickeningly loud. He screamed, the knife clattering to the wet pavement. A sharp, precise elbow to his temple dropped him like a sack of stones. Rick, fumbling inside his jacket for a weapon, was the next target. I closed the distance before he could clear his piece. A hard, open palm strike to his nose sent a spray of blood and cartilage across his face. He gagged, blinded by pain, and I followed with a knee to his groin. As he doubled over, I drove my own knee up into his face, feeling the impact shudder up my leg. He collapsed, moaning, into a puddle. 2 down in under 4 seconds. Then Volkov was on me. He was fast, impossibly so for a man his size. He didn't waste time with theatrics. A fist like a sledgehammer shot towards my head. I ducked, the air whistling where my skull had been. I tried to counter, but he was already moving, catching my strike on a forearm that felt like solid oak. He was a different class of opponent altogether. We circled each other in the narrow space, the rain now falling harder, washing the blood from Rick's face into the gutter. Volkov's eyes were analytical, reassessing me. I was no longer just a detective, I was a threat that needed to be neutralized. He feinted high and went low, tackling me around the waist. The breath exploded from my lungs as we crashed into the brick wall of the alley. Pain flared in my back, his weight was immense, crushing. I could smell the cheap soap on his skin and the faint, metallic scent of gun oil. He was trying to pin me to gain a dominant position. I fought like a wildcat, driving the heel of my hand up under his chin, forcing his head back. He grunted but didn't relent. One of his hands found my throat and began to squeeze. Spots danced before my eyes. The world began to narrow, the sounds of the city fading into a dull roar. This was how Arthur died, at the hands of this man. The thought was a lightning bolt of pure adrenaline. My free hand scrabbled at my belt, not for my gun, but for the small, heavy canister of police-issue pepper spray. With the last of my air, I brought it up and pressed the trigger directly into his face. The effect was instantaneous. He roared, a sound of pure animal agony, his grip on my throat loosening as his hands flew to his burning eyes. I shoved him off, gasping for air. He was stumbling, blind and enraged, swinging wildly. Now was the time for the gun. I drew my service weapon in one smooth motion, the world snapping back into sharp, brutal focus. "Mikhail Volkov, get on the ground, now!" I yelled, my voice raw from the choking. He didn't listen. Blinded and in pain, he took a wild swing in the direction of my voice. It was a desperate, futile move. I didn't hesitate, I couldn't. 2 shots rang out, sharp and deafening in the confined alley. Both rounds struck him center mass. The impact stopped him cold. He stood for a moment, a look of profound surprise on his contorted face before his legs gave way and he crumpled to the ground. Silence descended, broken only by the hiss of the rain, Leo's pained groans, and Rick's weak whimpers. The coppery smell of blood now mixed with the pungent odor of pepper spray and wet garbage. I stood there, gun still trained on Volkov's motionless form, my chest heaving, the adrenaline crash making my hands tremble. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing rapidly closer. A neighbor had undoubtedly reported the gunshots. Within minutes, the alley was flooded with blue and red lights. My team, swarmed the scene. I saw the shock on their faces as they took in the tableau, their lead detective standing over 3 of Silas Vancorp's most notorious lieutenants, 1 dead, 2 broken. I gave my statement with robotic precision, my shield now openly displayed on my belt. The forensics team collected Leo's knife, Rick's unused pistol, and my empty pepper spray canister. The coroner zipped Volkov's body into a black bag. It was a clean shoot, they said. A righteous shoot. Self-defense and the defense of others. But the real victory came later. With Leo and Rick in custody, facing a litany of new charges including attempted murder of a police officer, they were eager to talk. They gave up everything they had on Silas, providing the final, irrefutable evidence needed to link him directly to Arthur Finch's murder and a dozen other unsolved homicides. The temporary inconvenience of his prison sentence became a permanent, inescapable reality. He was transferred to a supermax facility, his every movement monitored, his influence finally and completely severed. There was no medal this time, no press conference, just the quiet satisfaction of a job finally, truly finished. The ghosts that had haunted my steps for over a year were finally laid to rest. I went back to my apartment. The leaky faucet was still dripping. The unread novels were still stacked by the bed, but the silence felt different. It was no longer the silence of absence, of Mark's departure and Arthur's ghost. It was a peaceful silence. The silence of a city that was, for tonight at least, a little bit safer. I stood by the window, looking out at the rain-washed city lights. The ache of my bruises was a dull, grounding throb. I thought of Arthur Finch's daughter, somewhere safe, hopefully living a life her father would be proud of. I thought of Mark, hoping he had found the peace he so desperately sought. They say you should never meet your heroes. I suppose the same is true for your villains. They build you up in their minds as a monster, a faceless enemy, a name on a warrant. They never imagine that the person who destroyed their world could be the woman taking a shortcut through a dark alley, her mind on a hot shower and a cold dinner. They never see the weight of the sacrifices, the cost of the victories, or the quiet, steely resolve forged in the fire of loss. That night, 3 men cornered me, thinking they held all the power. They didn't know they were just the final, messy punctuation on a story I had already written. They taught me in their violent, clumsy way that closure isn't something you find. It's something you take. And sometimes it's waiting for you in the last place you'd ever look in the dark, with your back against the wall and your own 2 hands.